looking for my... Where is it? Good morning. Good morning, good morning. Can everyone hear me? Did I lose the key to my coffin? Not quite. Good morning, Composer. Good morning, Zenfith. Good morning, Soul. Good morning, Cadence. Good morning, Canary. Good morning, Psyche. Good morning, Keith. Oh. Good morning. Oh. Peeks out of my coffin. Can everyone hear me? How is volume today? How's our audio? Can everyone see me? Thank you. Good to go. How are we all doing today? Crawls on for a bit of, hopefully, our last bit of Dorian Gray. I'll be glad to have one more book under the belt. Oh, I get by. I get by. Was that my handy dandy book? I reckon looking at what we've got left, we'll probably be here for maybe an hour or so. We're going on to chapter 18, methinks. What is it, 18? Yes. Oh, doing even better with a bun street. I'm glad. I'm happy to come on today. In fact, I was debating for you an hour with bun, just the same as usual. I was debating about whether or not to do my scuffed how to design process with bun today, or hello debut, have a good time at work. Or to finish off Dorian Gray. And now looking at time these coming days, I would like to do Dorian Gray today and then get onto that mayhaps after the weekend. We shall see. Hope that it's a good weekend for you all. I'm looking at the calendar and hoping that I can get everything that I want to have done before Valentine's rolls up. Oh, it's soon. Grips my tablet pen. Anyway, just rattling on. Alrighty. So, we are now reading The Picture of Dorian Gray. Just a recap as to what has happened. So, our handsome lad Dorian Gray, and I don't know how far should I recap this to. So just the last time we read, the last couple of chapters that we read through, what happened was that Dorian Gray, having gone to his favorite opium den, was accosted by none other than James Vane, the brother of Sybil Vane, who some of you may remember as the ill-fated one-day fiancé of Dorian Gray. Poor girl. He rejected her very cruelly one night, and she committed suicide not long after. And so James Vane, the beloved brother of this poor young girl, holds a gun to Dorian Gray's head and is like, I couldn't find you except by your nickname, your pet name, which is Prince Charming, something that Sybil Vane always used to call Dorian. But Dorian Gray, having not aged a day in the past, 16, 18 years, I keep forgetting how long has passed, it's like, hey man, look at my face. I'm so young and so innocent. Hello, Garland. Greetings. No one's going to implode from hand-holding on Valentine's. I'm pretty sure it's going to be not very romantic. Not a very romantic experience. But anyway. Dorian Gray is like, I don't know anyone called Sybil Vane. Ooh, look at my face, I'm so young. And James Vane, thinking he's been deceived, is like, holy shoot, I was gonna kill you. And then a lady from the opium den comes out and is like, why didn't you kill that kid? He's a bad guy. He's a devil. Bad guy. Greetings, Hunter. Greetings, Hello Kitty. Just doing a little Dorian recap before we start reading. And then a week later, Dorian is having a chat to, not the Duchess. The Duchess? Yes, the Duchess of Monmouth and, his friend in quotes, Lord Henry / Harry. And Duchess is basically hitting on Dorian, and they're having their noble people banter. And in the meantime, Dorian is like, I'm gonna go pick you a flower, I guess. I'm gonna pick you a flower. And so he wanders down the corridor. And despite being on this rich people retreat, keep calling it different things each time. Welcome, Dashing Demon. Just about to have a read of good old Dorian Gray. He faints. He faints dead on the floor, having seen James Vane in the window. And so that is where we are now. That is where we are now in the book. Going on to chapter 18. What kind of music should we play? Yeah, we'll go for something like this. Alrighty. So here we are, the Picture of Dorian Gray, chapter 18. The next day, he did not leave the house, and indeed, spent most of the time in his own room, sick with a wild terror of dying, and yet indifferent to life itself. The consciousness of being hunted, snared, tracked down, had begun to dominate him. If the tapestry did but tremble in the wind, he shook. The dead leaves that were blown against the lidded panes seemed to him like his own wasted resolutions and wild regrets. When he closed his eyes, he saw again the sailor's face peering through the mist-stained glass, and horror seemed once more to lay its hand on his heart. But perhaps had been only his fancy that had called vengeance out of the night and set the hideous shapes of punishment before him. Actual life was chaos, but there was something terribly logical in the imagination. It was the imagination that set remorse to dog the feet of sin. It was the imagination that made each crime bear its misshapen brood. In the common world of fact, the wicked were not punished, nor the good rewarded. Success was given to the strong, failure thrust upon the weak. That was all. Besides, had any stranger been prowling round the house, he would have been seen by the servants or the keepers. Had any footmarks been found on the flower beds, the gardeners would have reported it. Yes, it had been merely fancy. Sybil Vane's brother had not come back to kill him. He had sailed away in his ship to founder in some winter sea. From him, at any rate, he was safe. Why, the man did not know who he was, could not know who he was. The mask of youth had saved him. And yet, if it had been merely an illusion, how terrible it was to think that conscience could raise such fearful phantoms and give them visible form and make them move before one. What sort of life would his be if day and night shadows of his crime were to peer at him from silent corners, to mock him from secret places, to whisper in his ear as he sat at the feast, to wake him with icy fingers as he lay asleep? As the thought crept through his brain, he grew pale with terror, and the air seemed to him to have become suddenly colder. Oh, in what a wild hour of madness he had killed his friend! How ghastly the mere horror of the scene! He saw it all again. Each hideous detail came back to him with added horror. Out, the black cave of time, terrible and swathed in scarlet, rose the image of his sin. When Lord Henry came in at 6 o'clock, he found him crying as one whose heart will break. It was not till the third day that he ventured to go out. There was something in the clear, pine-scented air of that winter morning that seemed to bring him back his joyousness and his ardor for life. But it was not merely the physical conditions of environment that had caused the change. His own nature had revolted against the excess of anguish that had sought to maim and mar the perfection of its calm. With subtle and finely wrought temperaments, it is always so. Their strong passions must either bruise or bend. They either slay the man or themselves die. Shallow sorrows and shallow loves live on. The loves and sorrows that are great, destroyed by their own plentitude. Besides, he had convinced himself that he had been the victim of a terror-stricken imagination, and looked back now on his fears with something of pity and not a little of contempt. After breakfast, he walked with the Duchess for an hour in the garden, and then drove across the park to join the shooting party. The crisp frost lay like salt upon the grass. The sky was an inverted cup of blue metal. A thin film of ice bordered the flat, reed-grown lake. At the corner of the pinewood, he caught sight of Sir Geoffrey Clouston, the Duchess's brother, jerking 2 spent cartridges out of his gun. He jumped from the cart, and having told the groom to take the mare home, made his way towards his guest, through the withered bracken and rough undergrowth.
"Have you had good sport, Geoffrey?"
he asked.
Not very good, Dorian. I think most of the birds have gone to the open." They say it will be better after lunch when we get to new ground.
Dorian strolled along by his side. The keen, aromatic air, the brown and red lights that glimmered in the wood, the hoarse cries of the beaters ringing out from time to time, and the sharp snaps of the guns that followed, fascinated him and filled him with a sense of delightful freedom. He was dominated by the carelessness of happiness, by the high indifference of joy. Suddenly, from a lumpy tussock of old grass, some 20 yards in front of them, with black-tipped ears, erect and long hinder limbs throwing it forward, started a hare. It bolted for a thicket of alders. Sir Geoffrey put his gun to his shoulder, but there was something in the animal's grace of movement that strangely charmed Dorian Gray, and he cried out at once,
"Don't shoot it, Geoffrey. Let it live." "What nonsense, Dorian,"
laughed his companion. And as the hare bounded into the thicket, he fired. There were 2 cries heard. The cry of a hare in pain, which is dreadful. The cry of a man in agony, which is worse.
"Oh, good heavens! I've hit a beater!"
exclaimed Sir Geoffrey.
"What an ass the man was to get in front of the guns! Stop shooting there!"
he called out at the top of his voice.
"A man is hurt."
The headkeeper came running up with a stick in his hand.
"Where, sir? Where is he?"
shouted. At the same time, the firing ceased along the line.
"Here,"
answered Sir Geoffrey angrily, hurrying towards the thicket.
"Why on earth don't you keep your men back? It's spoiled my shooting for the day."
Dorian watched them as they plunged into the elder clump, brushing the lithe, swinging branches aside. In a few moments they emerged, dragging a body after them into the sunlight. Turned away in horror, it seemed to him that misfortune followed wherever he went. He heard Sir Geoffrey ask if the man was really dead, and the affirmative answer of the keeper. The wood seemed to him to have become suddenly alive with faces. There was the trampling of myriad feet and the low buzz of voices. A great, copper-breasted pheasant came beating through the boughs overhead. After a few moments that were to him, in his perturbed state, like endless hours of pain, he felt a hand laid on his shoulder. He started and looked round.
"Dorian,"
said Lord Henry.
"I'd better tell them that the shooting is stopped for today. It would not look well to go on." "I wish it was stopped forever, Harry,"
he answered bitterly.
"The whole thing is hideous and cruel. Is the man?"
Could not finish the sentence.
"I am afraid so,"
rejoined Lord Henry. He got the whole charge of shot in his chest. He must have died almost
instantaneously. Come, let us go home.
They walked side by side in the direction of the avenue for nearly 50 yards without speaking. Then Dorian looked at Lord Henry and said, with a heavy sigh,
"It is a bad omen, Harry. A very bad omen." "What is?"
asked Lord Henry.
This accident, I suppose. My dear fellow, it can't be helped. It was the man's own fault. Why did he get in front of the guns? Besides, it is nothing to us. It is rather awkward for Geoffrey, of course. It does not do to pepper beaters. It makes people think that one is a wild shot, and Geoffrey is not. He shoots very straight. But there is no use talking about the matter.
Dorian shook his head.
It is a bad omen, Harry. I feel as if something horrible were going to happen to some of us. To myself, perhaps.
He added, passing his hand over his eyes with a gesture of pain. The elder man laughed.
The only horrible thing in the world is ennui, Dorian. That is the one sin for which there is no forgiveness. But we are not likely to suffer from it unless these fellows keep chattering about this thing at dinner. I must tell them that the subject is to be tabooed. As for omens, there is no such thing as an omen. Destiny does not send us heralds. She is too wise or too cruel for that. Besides, what on earth could happen to you, Dorian? You have everything in the world that a man can want. There is no one who'd not be delighted to change places with you. There is no one with whom I would not change places, Harry. Don't laugh like that. I'm telling you the truth. The wretched peasant who has just died is better off than I am. I have no terror of death. It is the coming of death that terrifies me. Its monstrous wings seem to wheel in the leaden air around me. Good heavens! Don't you see a man moving behind the trees there? Watching me. Waiting for me.
Lord Henry looked in the direction in which the trembling gloved hand was pointing.
Yes,
he said, smiling.
I see the gardener waiting for you. I suppose he wants to ask you what flowers you wish to have on the table tonight. How absurdly nervous you are, my dear fellow. I must come and see my doctor when we get back to town.
Dorian heaved a sigh of relief as he saw the gardener approaching. The man touched his hat, glanced for a moment at Lord Henry in a hesitating manner, and then produced a letter, which he handed to his master.
Her Grace told me to wait for an answer,
he murmured. Dorian put the letter into his pocket.
Tell Her Grace that I'm coming in,
he said, coldly. The man turned round and went rapidly in the direction of the house.
Our women are so fond of doing dangerous things,
laughed Lord Henry.
It is one of the qualities in them that I admire most. A woman will flirt with anybody in the world as long as other people are looking on. How fond you are of saying dangerous things, Harry. In the present instance, you are quite astray. I like the Duchess very much, but I don't love her. And the Duchess loves you very much, but she likes you less, so you are excellently matched. You are talking scandal, Harry. There is never any basis for scandal. The basis of every scandal is an immoral certainty,
said Lord Henry, lighting a cigarette.
You would sacrifice anybody, Harry, for the sake of an epigram. The world goes to the altar of its own accord, was the answer. I wish I could love, cried Dorian with a deep note of pathos in his voice. But I seem to have lost the passion and forgotten the desire. I'm too much concentrated on myself. My own personality has become a burden to me. I want to escape, To go far away, to forget. It was silly of me to come down here at all. I shall think I send a wire to Harvey to have the yacht get ready. On a yacht, one is safe. Safe from what, Dorian? You're in some trouble. Why not tell me what it is? You know I would help you. I can't tell you, Harry,
he answered sadly.
And I dare say, it is only a fancy of mine. This unfortunate accident has upset me. I have a horrible presentiment that something of the kind may happen to me. What nonsense! I hope it is. But I can't help feeling it. Ah, here is the Duchess, looking like Artemis in a tailor-made gown. You see we have come back, Duchess.
I've heard all about it, Mr. Gray, she answered. Poor Geoffrey is terribly upset, and it seems that you asked him not to shoot the hare. How curious.
Yes, it was very curious. I don't know what made me say it. Some whim, I suppose. It looked like the loveliest of live little things. But I'm sorry they told you about the man. It is a hideous subject. It is an annoying subject, broke in Lord Henry. It has no psychological value at all. Now, if Geoffrey had done the thing on purpose, how interesting that would be. I should like to know someone who had committed a real murder.
How horrid of you, Harry, cried the Duchess. Isn't it Mr. Gray? Oh, Harry, Mr. Gray is ill again. He's going to faint. Dorian drew himself up with an effort and smiled.
It is nothing, Duchess, he murmured. My nerves are dreadfully out of order. That is all. I'm afraid I walked too far this morning. I didn't hear what Harry said. Was it very bad? You must tell me some other time. I think I must go and lie down. You will excuse me, won't you?
They had reached the great flight of steps that led from the conservatory onto the terrace. As the glass door closed behind Dorian, Lord Henry turned and looked at the Duchess with his slumberous eyes.
Are you very much in love with him?
He asked. She did not answer for some time, but stood gazing at the landscape. I wish I knew, she said at last.
He shook his head. Knowledge would be fatal. It is this uncertainty that charms one. A mist makes things wonderful.
One may lose one's way.
Always end at the same point, my dear Gladys.
What is that?
Disillusion.
It was my debut in life, she sighed.
It came to you crowned.
I am tired of strawberry leaves.
They become you.
Only in public.
You would miss them,
said Lord Henry. I will not part with a petal.
Monmouth has ears.
Has he never been jealous?
I wish he had been.
He glanced about as if in search of something. What are you looking for? She inquired.
The button from your foil,
he answered.
You've dropped it.
She laughed. I still have the mask.
It makes your eyes lovelier,
was his reply. She laughed again. The teeth showed like white seeds in a scarlet fruit. Upstairs, in his own room, Dorian Gray was lying on a sofa, with terror in every tingling fibre of his body. Life had suddenly become too hideous a burden for him to bear. The dreadful death of the unlucky beater, shot in the thicket like a wild animal, had seemed to him to prefigure death for himself also. He had nearly swooned at what Lord Henry had said in a chance mood of cynical jesting. At 5 o'clock, he rang his bell for his servant and gave him orders to pack his things for the night express to town and to have the brougham at the door by 8:30. He was determined not to sleep another night at Selby Royal. It was an ill-omened place. Death walked there in the sunlight. The grass of the forest had been spotted with blood. Then he wrote a note to Lord Henry, telling him that he was going up to town to consult his doctor and asking him to entertain his guests in his absence. As he was putting it into the envelope, a knock came to the door, and his valet informed him that the headkeeper wished to see him. He frowned and bit his lip.
"Send him in,"
he muttered, after some moments' hesitation. As soon as the man entered, Dorian pulled his checkbook out of a drawer and spread it out before him.
"I suppose you've come about the unfortunate accident of this morning, Thornton,"
he said, taking up a pen.
"Yes, sir,"
answered the gamekeeper.
"Was the poor fellow married? Had he any people dependent on him?"
asked Dorian, looking bored.
"If so, I should not like them to be left in want, and will send them any sum of money you may think necessary." "We don't know who he is, sir. That is why I took the liberty of coming to you about." "Don't know who he is?" said Dorian listlessly. "What do you mean? Wasn't he one of your men?" No, sir. Never saw him before. Seems like a sailor, sir."
The pen dropped from Dorian Gray's hand, and he felt as if his heart had suddenly stopped beating.
"A sailor?"
he cried out.
"Did you say a sailor?" "Yes, sir. He looks as if he had been a sort of sailor, tattooed on both arms, and that sort of thing." Was there anything found on him?"
said Dorian, leaning forward and looking at the man with startled eyes.
"Anything that would tell his name?"
"Some money,
sir, not much, and a 6-shooter. There was no name of any kind. A decent-looking man, sir, but rough-like. A sort of sailor, we think."
Dorian started to his feet. A terrible hope fluttered past him. He clutched at it madly.
"Where is the body?"
he exclaimed.
"Quick! We must see it at once." It is in an empty stable in the home farm, sir. The folk don't like to have that sort of thing in their houses. They say a corpse brings bad luck." "A home farm. Go there at once and meet me. Tell one of the grooms to bring my horse round. No, never mind. I'll go to the stables myself. It will save time."
In less than quarter of an hour, Dorian Gray was galloping down the long avenue as hard as he could go. The trees seemed to sweep past him in spectral procession, and wild shadows to fling themselves across his path. Once the mare swerved at the white gate post and nearly threw him. He lashed her across the neck with his crop. She cleft the dusky air like an arrow. The stones flew from her hooves. At last, he reached the home farm. 2 men were loitering in the yard. He leapt from the saddle and threw the reins to one of them. In the farthest stable, a light was glimmering. Something seemed to tell him the body was there. And he hurried to the door and put his hand upon the latch. There he paused for a moment, feeling that he was on the brink of a discovery that would either make or mar his life. Then, he thrust the door open and entered. On a heap of sacking in the far corner was lying the dead body of a man dressed in a coarse shirt and a pair of blue trousers. A spotted handkerchief had been placed over the face. A coarse candle stuck in a bottle sputtered beside it. Dorian Gray shuddered. He felt that his could not be the hand to take the handkerchief away, and called out to one of the farm servants to come to him.
Take that thing off the face. I wish to see it,
he said, clutching at the doorpost for support. When the farm servant had done so, he stepped forward. A cry of joy broke from his lips. The man who had been shot in the thicket was James Vane. He stood there for some minutes, looking at the dead body. As he rode home, his eyes were full of tears, for he knew that he was safe. So we come to the end, chapter 18. In it, we discover that while Dorian Gray and his rich friends have been out... Oh, thank you for the Bandring Water redeems. I'll have some water. Hello, Gina. Also, welcome, Latuka Jack. Hello, Red. Thank you so much for the sub, Red. Junko Enoshima, thank you very much. Hello, Hiraga Night Zero, welcome back. Some water. Hello, Supergram. So, the ghostly person, the ghostly shade of the sailor who'd held a gun to his head in the alleyway, had been shot by one of his noble friends. That's it. That's it. Oh, Dorian Gray. Oh, Dorian Gray, you're safe now from death at James Vane's hand. Ah, dearie me. Let's see. Maybe we'll go with this one. Oh, there's a little while to go, so let's shuffle on, shall we? It is the goal. Finish this book today. Now that James Vane is dead, though, what's Dorian Gray going to do? Is volume and whatnot still okay? I've moved my mic slightly, so it's in front of my keyboard this time. But let me know if I'm skipping out or anything of the sort. So on to chapter 19.
There is no use your telling me that you're going to be good,
cried Lord Henry, dipping his white fingers into a red copper bowl filled with rosewater.
You are quite perfect. Pray don't change.
Dorian Gray shook his head.
No, Harry. I have done too many dreadful things in my life. I'm not going to do any more. I began my good actions yesterday. Where were you yesterday? In the country, Harry. I was staying at a little inn by myself. My dear boy,
said Lord Henry, smiling.
Anybody can be good in the country. There are no temptations there. That is why people who live out of town are so absolutely uncivilized. Civilization is not by any means an easy thing to attain to. There are only two ways by which man can reach it. One is by being cultured, the other by being corrupt. Country people have no opportunity of being either, so they stagnate. Culture and corruption,
echoed Dorian.
I've known something of both. Seems terrible to me now that they should ever be found together. For I have a new ideal, Harry. I'm going to alter. I think I have altered. You have not yet told me what your good action was. Or did you say you had done more than one?
Asked his companion as he spilled into his plate a little crimson pyramid of seeded strawberries, and threw a perforated shell-shaped spoon snowed white sugar upon them.
I can tell you, Harry. It is not a story I could tell to anyone else. I spared somebody. It sounds vain, but you understand what I mean. She was quite beautiful and wonderfully like Sybil Vane. I think it was that which first attracted me to her. You remember Sybil, don't you? How long ago that seemed. Betty was not one of our own class, of course. She was simply a girl in a village, but I really loved her. I'm quite sure that I loved her. All during this wonderful May that we've been having, I used to run down and see her 2 or 3 times a week. Yesterday she met me in a little orchard. The apple blossoms kept tumbling down on her hair and she was laughing. We were to have gone away together this morning at dawn. Suddenly, I determined to leave her as flower-like as I had found her. I should think the novelty of the emotion must have given you a thrill of real pleasure, Dorian,
interrupted Lord Henry.
But I can finish your idyll for you. You gave her good advice and broke her heart. That was the beginning of your reformation. Harry, you are horrible. You mustn't say these dreadful things. Hetty's heart is not broken. Of course, she cried and all that, but there is no disgrace upon her. She can live, like Perdita, in her garden of mint and marigold. And weep over a faithless Florizel,
said Lord Henry, laughing, as he leaned back in his chair.
My dear Dorian, you have the most curiously boyish moods. Do you think this girl will ever really be content now with anyone of her own rank? I suppose she'll be married someday to a rough carter or a grinning ploughman. Well, the fact of having met you and loved you will teach her to despise her husband, and she will be wretched. From a moral point of view, I cannot say that I think much of your great renunciation. Even as a beginning, it is poor. Besides, how do you know that Hetty isn't floating at the present moment in some starlit mill pond with lovely water lilies around her like Ophelia? I can't bear this, Harry. You mock at everything and then suggest the most serious tragedies. I'm sorry I told you now. I don't care what you say to me. I know I was right in acting as I did. Poor Hetty. As I rode past the farm this morning, I saw her white face at the window like a spray of jasmine. Don't let us talk about it anymore. Don't try to persuade me that the first good action that I've done for years, the first little bit of self-sacrifice I've ever known, is really a sort of sin. I want to be better. I'm going to be better. Tell me something about yourself. What is going on in town? I have not been to the club for days. The people are still discussing poor Basil's disappearance. I should have thought that they'd got tired of that by this time,
said Dorian, pouring himself out some wine and frowning slightly.
My dear boy, they've only been talking about it for 6 weeks, and the British public are really not equal to the mental strain of having more than one topic every 3 months. They have been very fortunate lately, however. They have had my own divorce case, and Alan Campbell's suicide. Now that they have got the mysterious disappearance of an artist, Scotland Yard still insists that the man in the grey ulster who left for Paris by the midnight train on the 9th of November was poor Basil, and the French police declare that Basil never arrived in Paris at all. I suppose in about a fortnight or so we shall be told that he has been seen in San Francisco. 'Tis an odd thing, but everyone who disappears is said to be seen at San Francisco. It must be a delightful city, and possess all the attractions of the next world. What do you think has happened to Basil?
Asked Dorian, holding up his burgundy against the light and wondering how it was that he could discuss the matter so calmly.
I've not the slightest idea. If Basil chooses to hide himself, it is no business of mine. If he is dead, I don't want to think about him. Death is the only thing that ever terrifies me. I hate it.
Why? Said the younger man wearily.
Because,
said Lord Henry, passing beneath his nostrils the gilt trellis of an open vinaigrette box.
One can survive everything nowadays, except that. Death and vulgarity are the only 2 facts in the 19th century that one cannot explain away. Let us have our coffee in the music room, Dorian. You must play Chopin to me. The man with whom my wife ran away played Chopin exquisitely. Ah, poor Victoria. I was very fond of her. The house is rather lonely without her. Of course, married life is merely a habit, a bad habit, but then one regrets the loss of even one's worst habits. Perhaps one regrets them the most. They are such an essential part of one's personality.
Dorian said nothing, but rose from the table and passing into the next room, sat down to the piano and let his fingers stray across the white and black ivory of the keys. After the coffee had been brought in, he stopped and looking over at Lord Henry said,
Harry, did it ever occur to you that Basil was murdered?
Lord Henry yawned.
Basil was very popular and always wore a Waterbury watch. Why should he have been murdered? He was not clever enough to have enemies. Of course he had a wonderful genius for painting, but a man can paint like and yet be as dull as possible. Basil was really rather dull. He only interested me once, and that was when he told me years ago that he had a wild adoration for you, and that you were the dominant motif of his art. I was very fond of Basil,
said Dorian, with a note of sadness in his voice.
But don't people say that he was murdered? Or some of the papers do. It does not seem to me to be at all probable. I know there are dreadful places in Paris, but Basil was not the sort of man to have gone to them. He had no curiosity. It was his chief defect. What would you say, Harry, if I told you that I had murdered Basil?
Said the younger man. He watched him intently after he had spoken.
I would say, my dear fellow, that you are posing for a character that doesn't suit you. All crime is vulgar, just as all vulgarity is crime. It is not in you, Dorian, to commit a murder. I am sorry if I hurt your vanity by saying so, but I assure you, it is true. Crime belongs exclusively to the lower orders. I don't blame them in the smallest degree. I should fancy that crime was to them what art is to us, simply a method of procuring extraordinary sensations. A method of procuring sensations? Do you think then that a man who has once committed a murder could possibly do the same crime again? Don't tell me that. Anything becomes a pleasure if one does it too often,
cried Lord Henry, laughing.
That is one of the most important secrets of life. I should fancy, however, that murder is always a mistake. One should never do anything that one cannot talk about after dinner. But let us pass from poor Basil. I wish I could believe that he had come to such a really romantic end as you suggest, but I can't. I dare say he fell into the Seine off an omnibus and that the conductor hushed up the scandal. Yes, I should fancy that was his end. I see him lying now on his back under those dull green waters, with the heavy barges floating over him and long weeds catching in his hair. Do you know, I don't think he would have done much more good work. During the last 10 years, his painting has gone off very much.
Dorian heaved a sigh, and Lord Henry strolled across the room and began to stroke the head of a curious Java parrot, a large, grey-plumaged bird with pink crest and tail that was balancing itself upon a bamboo perch. As his pointed fingers touched it, it dropped the white scurf of crinkled lids over black, glass-like eyes and began to sway backwards and forwards.
Ah, yes,
he continued, turning round and taking his handkerchief out of his pocket.
His painting had quite gone off. It seemed to me to have lost something. It had lost an ideal. When you and he ceased to be great friends, he ceased to be a great artist. What was it that separated you? I suppose he bored you? If so, he never forgave you. It's a habit bores have. By the way, what has become of that wonderful portrait he did of you? I don't think I've ever seen it since he finished it. Oh, I remember you telling me years ago that you had sent it down to Selby, and that it had got mislaid or stolen on the way. You never got it back? What a pity. It really was a masterpiece. I remember I wanted to buy it. I wish I had now. It belonged to Basil's best period. Since then, his work was that curious mixture of bad painting and good intentions that always entitles a man to be called a representative British artist. Did you advertise for it? You should. I forget,
said Dorian.
I suppose I did. But I never really liked it. I'm sorry I sat for it. The memory of the thing is hateful to me. Why do you talk of it? It used to remind me of those curious lines in some play. Hamlet, I think. How do they run? Like the painting of a sorrow, a face without a heart. Yes, that is what it was like.
Lord Henry laughed.
If a man treats life artistically, his brain is his heart,
he answered, sinking into an armchair. Dorian Gray shook his head and struck some soft chords on the piano.
Like the painting of a sorrow,
he repeated.
A face without a heart.
The elder man lay back and looked at him with half-closed eyes.
By the way, Dorian,
he said after a pause,
what does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose? How does the quotation run? His own soul?
The music jarred, and Dorian Gray started and stared at his friend.
Why do you ask me that, Harry? My dear fellow,
said Lord Henry, elevating his eyebrows in surprise.
I asked you because I thought you might be able to give me an answer. That's all. I was going through the park last Sunday, and close by the Marble Arch, there stood a little crowd of shabby-looking people listening to some vulgar street preacher. As I passed by, I heard the man yelling out that question to his audience. It struck me as being rather dramatic. London is very rich in curious effects of that kind. A wet Sunday, an uncouth Christian in a mackintosh, a ring of sickly white faces under a broken roof of dripping umbrellas, and a wonderful phrase flung into the air by shrill, hysterical lips. It was really very good in its own way, quite a suggestion. I thought of telling the prophet that art had a soul, but that man had not. I am afraid, however, he would have not understood me. Don't, Harry. Soul is a terrible reality. It can be bought and sold and bartered away. It can be poisoned or made perfect. There is a soul in each one of us. I know it. Do you feel quite sure of that, Dorian? Quite sure. Then it must be an illusion. The things one feels absolutely certain about are never true. That is the fatality of faith, and the lesson of romance. How grave you are. Don't be so serious. What have you or I to do with the superstitions of our age? No, we have given up our belief in the soul. Play me something. Play me a nocturne, Dorian, and as you play, tell me in a low voice how you have kept your youth. You have some secret. I am only 10 years older than you are, and I am wrinkled and worn and yellow. You are really wonderful, Dorian. You have never looked more charming than you do tonight. You remind me the day I saw you first. You were rather cheeky, very shy, and absolutely extraordinary. You've changed, of course, but not in appearance. I wish you would tell me your secret. To get back my youth, I would do anything in the world, except take up exercise, get up early, or be respectable. Youth. There is nothing like it. It's absurd to talk of the ignorance of youth. The only people to whose opinions I listen now with any respect are people younger than myself. They seem in front of me. Life has revealed to them the latest wonder. As for the aged, I always contradict the aged. I do it on principle. If you ask them their opinion on something that happened yesterday, They solemnly give you the opinions current in 1820, when people wore high stocks, believed in everything, and knew absolutely nothing. Ah, how lovely that thing you are playing is. I wonder, did Chopin write it at Majorca, with the sea weeping round the villa, and the salt spray dashing against the panes? It is marvelously romantic. What a blessing it is that there is one art left to us that is not imitative. Don't stop. I want music tonight. It seems to me that you are the young Apollo, and that I am of Marcius listening to you. I have sorrows, Dorian, of my own that even you know nothing of. The tragedy of old age is not that one is old, but that one is young. I am amazed sometimes at my own sincerity. Ah, Dorian, how happy you are. What an exquisite life you've had. You have drunk deeply of everything. You've crushed the grapes against your palate. Nothing has been hidden from you, and it has all been to you no more than the sound of music. It has not marred you. You are still the same. I am not the same, Harry. Yes, you are the same. I wonder what the rest of your life will be. Don't spoil it by renunciations. At present, you are a perfect type. Don't make yourself incomplete. You are quite flawless now. You need not shake your head. You know you are. Besides, Dorian, don't deceive yourself. Life is not governed by will or intention. Life is a question of nerves and fibers and slowly built up cells in which thought hides itself and passion has its dreams. You may fancy yourself safe and think yourself strong, but a chance tone of color in a room or a morning sky, a particular perfume that you'd once loved, and that brings subtle memories with it, a line from a forgotten poem that you'd come across once again, cadence from a particular piece of music that you had ceased to play. I tell you, Dorian, that it is on things like these that our lives depend. Browning writes about that somewhere, but our senses will imagine them for us. There are moments when the odor of Lilas Blanc passes suddenly across me, and I have to live the strangest month of my life over again. I wish I could change places with you, Dorian. The world has cried out against us both, but it has always worshipped you. It will always worship you. You are the type of what the age is searching for and what it is afraid it has found. I am so glad that you have never done anything, never carved a statue, painted a picture, or produced anything outside of yourself. Life has been your art. You have set yourself to music. Your days are your sonnets.
Dorian rose up from the piano and passed his hand through his hair.
Yes, life has been exquisite,
he murmured.
But I'm not going to have the same life, Harry. And you must not say these extravagant things to me. You don't know everything about me. I think that if you did, even you would turn from me. You laugh. Don't laugh. Why have you stopped playing, Dorian? Go back and give me the nocturne over again. Ah, look at that great, honey-colored moon that hangs in the dusky air. She's waiting for you to charm her, and if you play, she will come closer to the earth. You won't? Let us go to the club then. It has been a charming evening, and we must end it charmingly. There is someone at the Whites who wants immensely to know you. Young Lord Poole, Bournemouth's oldest son. He's already copied your neckties and he's begged me to introduce him to you. He's quite delightful and rather reminds me of you. I hope not,
said Dorian, with a sad look in his eyes.
But I am tired tonight, Harry. I shan't go to the club. It is nearly 11 and I want to go to bed early. Oh, do stay. You've never played so well as tonight. There was something in your touch that was wonderful. It had more expression than I had ever heard from it before. It is because I am going to be good, he answered, smiling. I am a little changed already. You cannot change to me, Dorian,
said Lord Henry.
You and I will always be friends. Yet, you poisoned me with a book once. I should not forgive that. Harry, promise me that you will never lend that book to anyone. It does harm. Excuse me. My dear boy, you are really beginning to moralize. You will soon be going about like the converted and the revivalist, warning people against all the sins of which you have grown tired. You are much too delightful to do that. Besides, it is no use. You and I are what we are, and will be what we will be. As for being poisoned by a book, there is no such thing as that. Art has no influence upon action. It annihilates the desire to act. It is superbly sterile. The books that the world calls immoral are books that show the world its own shame. That is all. But we won't discuss literature. Come round tomorrow. I'm going to ride at 11. We might go together, and I will take you to lunch afterwards with Lady Branksome. She is a charming woman, and wants to consult you about some tapestries she's thinking of buying. Mind you come. Or shall we lunch with our little Duchess? She says she never sees you now. Perhaps you are tired of Gladys? I thought you would be. Her clever tongue gets on one's nerves. Well, in any case, be here at 11.
Must I really come, Harry?
Certainly. The park is quite lovely now. I don't think there have been such lilacs since the year I met you. Very well. I shall be here at 11,
said Dorian.
Good night, Harry.
As he reached the door, he hesitated for a moment, as if he had something more to say. Then, he sighed and went out. Chapter 20. It was a lovely night, so warm that he threw his coat over his arm and did not even put his silk scarf round his throat. As he strolled home, smoking a cigarette, 2 young men in evening dress passed him. He heard one of them whisper to the other,
"It's Dorian Gray."
He remembered how pleased he used to be when he was pointed out, or stared at, or talked about. He was tired of hearing his own name now. Half the charm of the little village where he had been so often lately was that no one knew who he was. He had often told the girl whom he had lured to love him that he was poor, and she had believed him. He had told her once that he was wicked, and she had just laughed at him and answered that wicked people were always very old and very ugly. What a laugh she had, just like a thrush singing. How pretty she had been in her cotton dresses and large hats. She knew nothing, but she had everything that he had lost. When he reached home, he found his servant waiting up for him. He sent him to bed, threw himself down on the sofa in the library, and began to think over some of the things that Lord Henry had said to him. Was it really true that one could never change? He felt a wild longing for the unstained purity of his boyhood, his rose-white boyhood, as Lord Henry had once called it. He knew that he had tarnished himself, filled his mind with corruption, and given horror to his fancy, that he had been an evil influence to others, and had experienced terrible joy in being so, and that of the lives that had crossed his own, it had been the fairest and the most full of promise that had been brought to shame. But was it all irretrievable? Was there no hope for him? In what a monstrous moment of pride and passion he had prayed that the portrait should bear the burden of his days, and that he keep the unsullied splendor of eternal youth. All his failure had been due to that. Better for him that each sin of his life had brought its sure, swift penalty along with it. There was purification and punishment. Not forgive us our sins, but smite us for our iniquities, should be the prayer of a man to most just God. The curiously carved mirror that Lord Henry had given to him so many years ago now was standing on the table, and the white-limbed cupids laughed round it as of old. He took it up, as he had done on that night of horror when he had first noted the change in the fatal picture, and with wild, tear-dimmed eyes looked into its polished shield. Once, someone who had terribly loved him had written to him a mad letter, ending with these idolatrous words: "The world is changed because you are made of ivory and gold. The curves of your lips rewrite history." The phrases came back to his memory, and he repeated them over and over to himself. Then he loathed his own beauty, and flinging the mirror onto the floor, crushed it into silver splinters beneath his heel. It was his beauty that had ruined him, his beauty and the youth that he had prayed for. But for those two things, his life might have been free of stain. His beauty had been to him but a mask, his youth but a mockery. What was youth at best? A green and unripe time, a time of shallow moods and sickly thoughts. Why had he worn its livery? Youth had spoiled him. It was better not to think of the past. Nothing could alter that. It was of himself and of his own future that he had to think about. James Vane was hidden in a nameless grave in Selby churchyard. Alan Campbell had shot himself one night in his laboratory, but had not revealed the secret that he had been forced to know. The excitement, such as it was, over Basil Hallward's disappearance would soon pass away. It was already waning. He was perfectly safe there. nor indeed was it the death of Basil Hallward that weighed most upon his mind. It was the living death of his own soul that troubled him. Basil had painted the portrait that had marred his life. He could not forgive him that. It was the portrait that had done everything. Basil had said things to him that were unbearable, and that he had yet borne with patience. The murder had been simply the madness of a moment. As for Alan Campbell, his suicide had been his own act. He had chosen to do it. It was nothing to him. A new life. That was what he had wanted. That was what he was waiting for. Surely he had begun it already. He had spared one innocent thing at any rate. He would never again tempt innocence. He would be good. As he thought of Hetty Merton, he began to wonder if the portrait in the locked room had changed. Surely it was not still so horrible as it had been. Perhaps, if his life became pure, he would be able to expel every sign of evil passion from the face. Perhaps the signs of evil had already gone away. He would go and look. He took the lamp from the table and crept upstairs. As he unbarred the door, a smile of joy flitted across his strangely young-looking face and lingered for a moment about his lips. Yes, he would be good, and the hideous thing that he had hidden away would no longer be a terror to him. He felt as if the load had been lifted from him already. He went in quietly, locking the door behind him, as was his custom, and dragged the purple hanging from the portrait. A cry of pain and indignation broke from him. He could see no change, save that in the eyes there was a look of cunning, and in the mouth the curved wrinkle of the hypocrite. The thing was still loathsome, more loathsome, if possible, than before, and the scarlet dew that spotted the hand seemed brighter and more like blood newly spilled. And he trembled. Had it been merely vanity that had made him do this one good deed, or the desire for a new sensation, as Lord Henry had hinted with his mocking laugh, or that passion to act a part that sometimes makes us do things finer than we are ourselves, or perhaps all these? And why was the red stain larger than it had been? It seemed to have crept, like a horrible disease, over the wrinkled fingers. There was blood on the painted feet, as though the thing had dripped. Blood even on the hand that had not held the knife. Confess? Did it mean that he was to confess? To give himself up and be put to death? He laughed. He felt that the idea was monstrous. Besides, even if he did confess, who would believe him? There was no trace of the murdered man anywhere. Everything belonging to him had been destroyed. He himself had burned what had been below stairs. The world would simply say that he was mad. They would shut him up if he persisted in this story. Yet, it was his duty to confess, to suffer public shame, to make public atonement. There was a God who called upon men to tell their sins to earth as well as to heaven. Nothing that he could do would cleanse him till he had told his own sin. His sin? He shrugged his shoulders. The death of Basil Hallward seemed very little to him. He was thinking of Hetty Merton, for it was an unjust mirror, this mirror of his soul that he was looking at. Vanity? Curiosity? Hypocrisy? Had there been nothing more in his renunciation than that? There had been something more. At least he had thought so. But who could tell? No, had been nothing more. Through vanity he had spared her. In hypocrisy he had worn the mask of goodness. For curiosity's sake he had tried the denial of self. He recognized that now. But this murder, was it to dog him all his life? Was he always to be burdened by his past? Was he really to confess? Never. There was only one bit of evidence left against him. The picture itself. That was evidence. He would destroy it. Why had he kept it so long? Once it had given him pleasure to watch it changing and growing old. Of late, he had felt no such pleasure. It had kept him awake at night. When he had been away, he had been filled with terror lest other eyes should look upon it. It had brought melancholy across his passions. Its mere memory had marred many moments of joy. It had been like conscience to him. Yes, it had been conscience. He would destroy it. He looked round and saw the knife that had stabbed Basil Hallward. He had cleaned it many times till there was no stain left upon it. It was bright and glistened. As it had killed the painter, so it would kill the painter's work, and all that meant. It would kill the past, and when that was dead he would be free. It would kill this monstrous soul life, and without its hideous warnings he would be at peace. He seized the thing and stabbed the picture with it. There was a cry heard and a crash. The cry was so horrible in its agony that the frightened servants woke and crept out of their rooms. 2 gentlemen who were passing in the square below stopped and looked up at the great house. They walked on till they met a policeman and brought him back. The man rang the bell several times, but there was no answer, except for a light in one of the top windows. The house was all dark. After a time, he went away and stood in an adjoining portico and watched.
Whose house is that, Constable?
Asked the elder of the 2 gentlemen.
Mr. Dorian Gray, sir,
answered the policeman. They looked at each other as they walked away and sneered. One of them was Sir Henry Ashton's uncle. Inside, in the servants' part of the house, the half-clad domestics were talking in low whispers to each other. Old Mrs. Leaf was crying and wringing her hands. Francis was as pale as death. After about a quarter of an hour, he got the coachman and one of the footmen and crept upstairs. They knocked. There was no reply. They called out. Everything was still. Finally, after vainly trying to force the door, they got on the roof and dropped down onto the balcony. The windows yielded easily. Their bolts were old. When they entered, they found hanging upon the wall a splendid portrait of their master as they had seen him. In all the wonder of his exquisite youth and beauty. Lying on the floor was a dead man in evening dress with a knife in his heart. He was withered, wrinkled, and loathsome of visage. It was not till they had examined the rings that they recognized who it was. The end. Welcome home, debut. Hello, Shrimp EO. Thank you for the bun drink water redeems and fifth. And key. Rolls to get. Rolls to get. Till. We made it to the end. So, the summary of what happened in these last 3 chapters is, for those of you who missed it very cleanly, is Lord Henry and Dorian Gray are at his home, as in Henry's home, just talking about things. Lord Henry says, "Dorian, you're perfect," which he says every day. And Dorian says, "I did a good deed. I went to a village and I found this girl, this lovely girl who reminded me a lot of my dead fiance. And we had a great time, but then I dumped her." And Lord Henry says, yeah, good deed. Right. And then they go on to talk about Basil Hallward, who disappeared. There's also mention of Alan Campbell's suicide. And while talking about Basil's disappearance, Dorian Gray is calmer than he used to be. I mean, given any time that this topic has come up before, he's kind of gone off his rocker a bit. But this time, he says to Harry, you know, what would you say if I told you that I killed Basil? Seriously. And of course, Harry is like, only bad people commit murder, and you are super good. You'll always be good, because you're beautiful, Dorian Gray. And so Dorian Gray, who's just been denied this confession, is like, then, well, has anyone who commits murder once, like, done it again? And then Harry says, well, if they like it, maybe they'll do it again, or something like that. But murder is always a mistake. You shouldn't murder people. Also, you know, after you broke off your friendship with Basil, I felt like his painting just wasn't as good, you know? And Dorian Gray this entire time has been kind of, okay. And then, talking about Basil and his painting, is reminded of the portrait. And then Dorian Gray recites these lines from Hamlet, saying, "Like the painting of a sorrow, a face without a heart." And he thinks about this quote many times. And then Harry, who's like, "Oh, wish I could be young again. Dorian, tell me, how did you manage to stay so young over the years? I am 10 years older than you, but I look like I'm 30 years older than you," which is accurate because Dorian Gray is not aging naturally. And he says, "Oh, your life has been wonderful." And then, "Yeah, I want to be young again." "Oh, Dorian, you're still the same." To which Dorian Gray says, "I am not the same, Harry." And then Harry is like, "Tosh, you're still the same. Well, stay your perfect self. Play me some music." And then while talking about how wonderful Dorian Gray's life has been, Dorian Gray, kind of entering this deep depression, goes out and is like, "I'm tired. Sorry, I'm going home. See you later. Bye-bye." So saying goodnight to Harry, he goes home. And on this lovely night, he goes home. This is chapter 20 now. He goes home and two gentlemen walking by, two young men walking by, see him and they whisper among themselves, that's Dorian Gray, like Mean Girl in the Corridor flavored that's Dorian Gray. And then Dorian Gray, thinking about his good deed for the day, as in dumping that village girl, he's like, oh, she was so beautiful. I mean, I did this out of the goodness of my own heart, right? 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 You know? He's convincing himself that he's going to be good. And as he's thinking, you know, this is kind of terrible. Now that I've gained eternal youth, life is pretty jank. And so thinking about his portrait and that it's so ugly now because of all of the terrible things that he has done in his life, it's like, wow, since I've done like my first good deed forever, which by the way was dumping someone, so he was like, oh well, you know, she cried, but I didn't do anything wrong. I did it for the good of something. Goes to look at the portrait, Basil Hallward's belovedly painted portrait. And then when he goes to see it, shock horror, the portrait looks worse than ever. And so there's blood dripping everywhere, and Basil Hallward's initial beautiful portrait of Dorian Gray is nowhere to be seen. And he stands there and thinks about his sinning over the many years, like the friends that he had driven to suicide, or James Vane, who had been killed in his pursuit of him, or Basil Hallward, who he had murdered in cold blood, the murder of which he is still defending right at the very end. And then he's like, oh my god, I'm going insane. Are you telling me I have to confess for this murder that no one is going to believe that I did? I mean, even my friend didn't believe that I committed that murder. But what am I going to do? Who am I going to confess to? And then he thinks, it's this portrait that's done me wrong. It's the painting's fault that my life has gone to seed. And so he grabs the knife, which he very conveniently used to stab Basil Hallward, and he stabs the portrait. And then there's a scream, and then the police have to break into his house, and they find that on the floor is a dead, disgusting old guy. Is an absolutely foul old man with a knife in his heart. And then a beautiful portrait of the master in his youth. Unsullied, untouched. And so that is the Picture of Dorian Gray. I hope that you guys have all enjoyed this journey into Oscar Wilde, who I think reading his stuff is always kind of wild without the E. The Grey Blaster, thank you very much for the curious message. I will do you a favor and not read that aloud. It was great. I'm glad if you found it great. Sorry as always for my dusty vocals. But we try. Oh, I have to show you something. Before we tie up, I have to show you this delightful thing, which why is it so big? Hold on. It's massive. So I was sent this delightful thing. Big. Okay. I just need you all to look at this with me. on here? What's actually going on here? Anyway, Kura sent me this earlier, and I would absolutely read this book. Like, if this book had a written version, I would read it. Hi, Jay. It's a great image. Okay, for starters, who is that person? Who's that person ghosted in the top right corner? And like, why is Find Dory? Is this like a mobile game? Why is this? I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start with this image. Like, what? There's so many questions. I have so many questions. Oscar Wilde, but it looks like Oscar Wilde, call me. 20 gems to Find Dory. I don't play enough mobile game to know how that works, but I'll take it. In the background, okay, in the left side, I don't know what that is hanging. I don't know what that is hanging there. What is that? Is that like a dress? Is that like a ghost? Eek. What? What? So there's a set of drawers here. And there's is someone hanging in the tree? That's really awful. No! Oh my goodness, that's really awful. Oh my gosh. Okay, someone's hanging in the tree. Now that you mention it, it really does look like someone hanging. I thought it was just a dress, but that's ominous. And then on this side here we have is this meant to be like a representation of Dorian Gray and Lord Henry? Is that guy wearing cowboy boots? I don't even know where to start. There's like so much to be uncovered in this one image. It's a party. It's a party. It's not exactly my type of story. Oh, thank you for thinking that my voice is cute rather than desiccated, which I often think. Is this Brokeback Mountain? I mean, maybe it would be if any of the characters in Dorian Gray had like hooked up in the process, as in like Dorian Gray and Lord Henry. But that obviously didn't happen. Maybe there's like an implication of that happening in this story. The Picture of Dorian Gray. Oh, this this image. I'm losing it. Who made this? And why did they make it? Oh, it's fascinating. And yet somehow I felt compelled to download it and share it with you guys. Thanks for that, Kura. It's excellent. I think I'll look at it and think deeply about it another day. Oh, thank you. Thank you for the kind word. Uses the word desiccated liberally. But, aye. We... it's funny. I like it. I think I'm gonna hang on to this and I'll look at it. I'll look at it another day. But yeah. If such a book ever actually comes into existence, I'd be interested to read it. Speaking of Dorian Gray media, though, I'm pretty sure there's at least one or two movies made of Dorian. Yeah, amazing is the right word. It's a mystery. I've never actually seen the Dorian Gray movies. So I think at some point it might be nice to watch one. I'm not sure if that's allowed. On stream. I mean, potentially it could always just like happen on server, but 50 Shades of Dorian Gray. I'm pretty sure that there's like 3 movies max, but you know. Scratch his head. We'll see. I mean, I'm not too fussed. I've had plenty of time to watch the Dorian Gray movies, but I've never quite gotten around to it. Probably because I think that the book is already just prime cinema as is. The book. Thank you for keeping company with me throughout this book. I feel like eventually when I've made my way through some other books, if I ever get around to it, I might even read this a second time. I might even read it again. But just because I think it's hilarious. And I just no, not a good idea to watch it on stream. That's fine, that's fine. We won't watch anything on stream. But that is us today, methinks. Oh. Thanks for listening to me read. I reckon that it's probably not very popular content, but I appreciate nonetheless that there's folks who will enjoy it, or at least tell me that it's nice. At least tell me that it's nice. But glad that there's folks who'll listen to Bun Gobble. Yes, thank you for listening. I like it. I like this book. I think some of the media that I like reading is just really strange. Questionable things that come into the Bun reading box, but... Oh! Is Silent here? Joka, hello. Greetings. If Silent's not here, I might not read it, but I was looking at the wine revenge. Wine Revenge by Edgar Allan Poe. Classics. Speaking of other classics to read. Oh no! You don't bother. Don't bother. Don't leave him be. Leave the poor man be. I passed eyes over it, and sorry, I'm going off on another tangent, but it didn't occur to me until the end of the stream that it was pronounced Amontillado, as in like double L, yeah, double L, yeah, as is, what is it, Spanish flavor? And this is a popular type of content. Is it? I don't think I've ever really done popular content, but I'm grateful for the kind words. Thank you for listening. At the very least, I try to read it nicely. Don't know how it goes, but the effort is there. Crustily crawls by. Amontillado. Amontillado. Oh ho ho. Wonders it some more. Oh, no worries, Majesty. Thank you for listening to me read. It's fine. I noticed that everyone does just kind of hush down while I'm reading, and I also can't respond to chat as readily. So that's more than understandable and more than fine. I'm not. I wasn't worried about it. I just, yeah. I do think in the back of my mind that I sure enjoy doing stuff that not many folks are interested in. But yes, I do post the VODs on YouTube. I'll post a handful of VODs, like 2 or 3, when I get round to uploading this one. I used to stream a bit more on YouTube. I feel like I might go back and schedule some sort of tabletop at some point, but nowadays I just stream on Twitch and then I pick them up on YouTube. Tabletop, that's right. Tabletop with Red is also on the cards. When Red is not dying of work, you know? Oh, I'm not even good at tabletop, but I'm happy to give it a go. Happy to give it a play. No, that wasn't a rush. It was an I am thinking about it. It wasn't I am thinking about it. Because this type of story should be popular on YouTube. You know, something that I do revisit when it comes to readings aloud is a reading of The Little Prince. I was particularly fond of the way that this fellow read it. It just felt very it felt very what is the vibe? Like uncle reading to a batch of slightly sleepy children vibes. And I feel like that was about perfect for someone like me. How popular to you? Thank you. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. Maintain a grateful soul, maintain the desire to make the content that I just want to make and spend time with folks here that I want to spend. Most of the Cask of Amontillado is like a banter, so I feel like it would honestly be fun to read with someone instead, but I am glad to read it at some point. Oh, Red, perfect. I will be glad to have my audience of like one, audience of one, no matter what strange things I'm doing in the future. The most important is, yes, it's true. I really, I want to, audience of 2. That's fine. You know, when there's 2 people sitting there listening to you read, that's already an audience. So. Very glad. It's kind of incredible to me that that you guys so frequently make time to visit. And VOD watchers, that's right. One of my friends is a VOD watcher. I uploaded the last part of Dorian Gray, and she messaged me just before sleeping and was like, "Thanks, I'll listen to this before I go to sleep." And I was very tickled by that. How do you make the time? How do any of you make the time? I know that you watch other streamers too, so, and you know, your lives are not so roomy that you can always sit in with fun. After all, it's such a calming time. I'm glad if you find it calming. Like having stream on in the background as I work. I do too. I am a stream lurker mostly. I am also a VOD watcher mostly, but I do enjoy having that there. I don't know. So before I forget, before we tie up, upcoming. So we are weekend at the moment. Crumbs watching VTubers while rigging VTubers. Oh, just hold your hands in quiet solidarity. Except I can't watch anything while I am. Oh, Debut, thank you for the gift sub. There you go, Jay. You can get a little flower. Oh, Aurelia, Neko, don't worry about being late or anything. Thank you for coming at all. I tried. I had to open up Live2D for the first time in a little while to add in my pouch and add in the hand holding, and it took me forever, not because of the actual work, but because of the computer dying noises. And general Live2D disagreeability with my hand-holding is too much. I tell you what's going to happen though. Hand-holding is dono content. It will be dono content. I will hold hands with you and I will draw you a little bun on a chocolate and write your name and hold your hand. Live2D too sensitive for hand-holding? Not quite. More like my computer is extremely crunchy. But no. There's no need to go broke. There's no need to go, no need to go broke. It's just a little. I don't know. It's not that I am like desperately trying to round up donations or anything. It's just that I thought this would be a fun event. But since I can't hold everyone's hand, I just wanted to make it special for the people who did donate, is all. Oh, Jane. No. No. Nothing special. Am I gonna break your hands by holding them? I don't know. Will I be able to give your hands back afterwards? We'll find out. No, I joke. I jest. Thank you for considering. Thank you for thinking about it. I don't really expect anything except that I'll hope that the people who come along will enjoy it. Maybe. Yeah. In the end, what's going to happen, since I'm slowly running out of time to put this together, I do have to kind of schedule things in at the right times. Let's see. So upcoming, aside from eventual Valentine's Day, we will have the designer thing with Bun. So designer thing. Maybe I'll like design and adopt from the beginning with you guys. Usually the designing process is embarrassing and not something that I like to show people, and I usually have 1,000 million works in progress lying about in my folders from some year/month/ even longer than that ago. But we can do that together. I know a lot of people have been curious to ask about, how I design things, and it's kind of shameful. I think that it's pretty normal, maybe. We'll see. Everyone designs things normally for themselves, and it could be super wild. I do love the classic feeling of going on Pinterest and finding my own art, which is fine. That's just how it's gonna be. But believe it or not, Pinterest is not my usual to go to. I don't. I mean, aside from finding stuff that I've made on Pinterest in unexpected places, usually I like to. Okay, we'll have this conversation next time. When I'm talking woefully about my inability to design. But when I'm really stuck, there is somewhere that I always go to, and I'm quite embarrassed, but I'll confess my sins. I'll confess my sins to you, and you can all laugh at me afterwards. And then there's I think a short pixel game that I think I wanted to share with you guys. It's a little bit oh, are those sirens? Sirens. Pardon the wee woos. How the turntable. Aside from design doing stream, we have a little pixel game that I was thinking of sharing with you guys that just has a vibe. Has a vibe to it that I think is kind of lovely. The police are coming for me, I know. I better go now. Better head off soon before they catch me. But after that, likely Valentine's. Very likely Valentine's. Valentine's will be 2 days. It'll be the 14th for me and the 15th for me, but it'll be the 13th and the 14th schedule-wise. I'll make some kind of schedule, so you guys will know what's going on. It's okay, I'll go into hiding. Go into hiding with my cool mafia duck friend. And hopefully you guys will be in the know about what's gonna happen then. And aside from that, there's no plans. So I will do my best to see you all again. Do my best to hop on again at some point. Thank you always for visiting me. Puts on my wave hand. Lovely, as always, to spend this time with you. Thank you for looking at that, the painting, the picture of Dory in Gray with me. Thank you for sending that to me, Kura. Probably not here. Hope to see you all again soon. I love Dorian Gray. Go on. I'll go check it out another time. Good night. Thank you. Good night, everyone. Good night, good night.